being a member of the Information Society? That's a difficult question because I didn't know we were in the...
Hey guys, Famous Amos here, and this is the first video on a new series I'm doing on the channel called Without the Hype. Now on this series, we're just going to talk about the OriginTrail decentralized network technologies in a really relaxed format. There isn't really a schedule or plan or anything, but we really want to dive into the technology and see what we can learn and what we can pick up. So I think the OriginTrail documentation did do a good job in terms of explaining the technology in a way that makes sense. So they started by discussing the issues the OriginTrail decentralized network tackles, what it solves. So I think we should follow suit. So as you're on the website, you can see that the first issue presented is the issue of fragmented and siloed data across supply chains. Now, this is quite a big issue to resolve, because if you've been following supply chain or the issues in the supply chain space, the supply chain is not linear. You're not just going to find, hey, I need to call this guy to get the information on one particular batch of products in a linear fashion. It can be all over in different sections. Each product is composed of many different pieces, different hands and parts and partners and manufacturers to create one simple product. So, and each of these players are only responsible for their part of the supply chain. And this presents a unique issue because you're not able to see full visibility of the supply chain, because each manufacturer only cares about who they sell to or who they're buying from. This is basically known as the one step up, one step down issue. So having fragmented and siloed data, data silos, isn't really beneficial to an efficient or a system that is trying to be efficient. So the OriginTrail decentralized network helps to resolve this issue by allowing entities to share data and share it in such a way it appears to be linear, because you have full visibility of the supply chain, but really and truly it's a decentralized knowledge graph that has the context for the connection between these data points, so you're able to see in a linear fashion, even though the supply chain may not be set up in a linear fashion. So the OriginTrail decentralized network is uniquely set up to tackle this issue. We will be getting into how it does that, but it's good to understand, the general overview of what it's solving. Next, we have low data interoperability. Now, as we were talking about these different manufacturers who may have different roles in manufacturing one product, they may also have different ways in storing the information or the data they have on their portion of the supply chain. So for example, let's say I'm a pretty poor farmer and I don't really have the money to spend on a $10,000 ERP software solution. I might be relegated to using something like Excel, or some people aren't even using Excel. Some people are still using paper, writing down all their transactions on paper. So you're going to need to you're not really going to have any digital system just being able to, interoperate with paper-based systems. You're going to have a digital system with a digital system at the very least. And even then, a IBM ERP software may not be compatible with a Microsoft ERP software. So then you may have to build a bridge in between the software just to get them to speak, so you could get more visibility throughout the supply chain. But is that all you can get? No, it's not the maximum potential. So this is why the OriginTrail decentralized knowledge graph is super, super vital. It's super important because it gives that full vision, and it also helps data become interoperable, because using their software, you have to apply to the standards. You have to apply the GS1 standards, which if everyone conforms to, it makes everyone speak the same language. And this is what is meant by GS1 global standards, speaking the global language of business. Because if you think about it, businesses are really, I guess, dependent upon barcodes and RFID chips and scanners and all these things, that point of sale systems. Without it, you can't make sales, you can't make purchases. You know, it's pretty vital. That's the language of your business. Now, the OriginTrail decentralized network also prevents vendor lock-in. Because of its decentralized nature, anyone can really build on top of it. So it really allows you to test and try different solutions free. You know, you're not if you're using Hyperledger today, well, you're pretty much got to be locked into Hyperledger if you plan to share into another Hyperledger network. If you want to use the IBM Food Trust, well, you're kind of siloed in utilizing their proprietary software. So the OriginTrail decentralized network is removing those barriers and allowing all of these ecosystems to communicate in a way that allows for full visibility and high data interoperability, utilizing these GS1 standards and speaking the global language. Now, we will talk a bit about why this is important very soon, and I do have an example to show you as to why you want this level of interoperability. But let's deal with the fourth and final point that OriginTrail, the technology, resolves, and that is the issue of ensuring the integrity of exchanged data. Of course, within the OriginTrail decentralized network, the data is verifiable and secure. You're gonna want to make sure that you're using a system, you know, that isn't really open. I guess you don't want private data being leaked. You don't want data to be manipulated and you're reading the incorrect version by some malicious actor. You know, the data is hashed. It's fingerprinted onto the Ethereum blockchain. So you're gonna be able to cross-check and validate all the data and make sure that you are getting the accurate data for your use case. You know, no fake news. OriginTrail is gonna help with verifying data, which is quite important when you think about the effects of false data anywhere in any industry. So the OriginTrail ecosystem is built upon three main pillars: neutrality, usability, and inclusiveness. Now let's dive into neutrality a little bit. Why would you want to ensure that a system or a protocol that you're using is neutral? Vendor neutral, government neutral, user neutral. Why? Well, it encourages participation. Now, I do have an article here pulled up from the IBM, when IBM had an issue getting their private blockchains adopted, and why? Well, it says right here, IBM and Marasak joint ventures is struggling to attract shipping carriers due to concerns over who ultimately owns the IP for the blockchain network. So you see, if your software is proprietary and if it's closed source, if it's private, people are going to have a hard time trusting you. For example, if you've been following Frank Yanis, who is the Deputy Commissioner at the FDA right now for food safety, he really explained in his fireside chat that people weren't willing to participate in a closed source system because they don't really want all of their data. For example, we've trusted Google, we've trusted Facebook with our data, and what have they done?
About 8 months ago, I was giving a testimony in front of a congressional committee on blockchain. And I was asked, what do you think the government should do? At that time, I sat across the desk looking at, these congressional leaders, and I said, stay out of the way. Let's go fast. Don't slow it up. Let us innovate. I will tell you, 6 months into this role in the public sector, I wish I would have answered that question very differently. Because there is a role for the public sector in blockchain solutions and helping them scale. And these are some of the challenges that we're working through right now at FDA, which is how does the public sector incentivize blockchain development and utilization? Creating transparency of the food system is a great thing for the private and public sector. But what is the public sector's role in that? Will these private, and I don't like the word private, but will enterprise blockchain solutions instill trust? Because one of the things we know is when these events happen, They cause a lack of confidence or trust in the food system. And if all the data in the food system is being kept on enterprise solutions, will consumers really trust it? Let me go back. What role do governments have in adopting standards and interoperability requirements? I believe if governments step up and say, these are the standards, the data attributes that have to be traced, it makes it easy for private solutions to scale and not have to create their own standards, and then we find that they're not interoperable. Because I don't think there'll be a blockchain ecosystem that dominates the world. And how do we speak up? That's a very strong voice that says, these solutions have to be interoperable. And will private or enterprise solutions be willing to share data with the public sector? They have to. Does the public sector have a role in the creation of these networks, and are they a node? These are all serious questions that we have to answer. We're grappling through them. They are early days in blockchain, but I hope that I've persuaded you, and I know from firsthand experience, it has to be public-private collaboration to develop these ecosystems.
They've taken our data, they've sold it for profit, they've basically mined us and minted us like we were farms. So we want a software or a protocol that's neutral, that cannot be manipulated or leveraged by any centralized entity for malicious activity or malicious gain. So this is why the OriginTrail decentralized network is in a prime position to support networks like the IBM Food Trust and the FDA's new era of smart food, because it is neutral. For example, the OriginTrail decentralized network can be used by the FDA, but it's also being used in EU under the food safety market. These are two completely different markets that can leverage the ODN in a secure, private way without any sort of risk. So this is what we were talking about earlier. You're going to want to have a system that everyone can participate in. Now, usability, of course, is important. No one's going to use a technology you can't understand. No one's going to use a technology that is not easy to integrate. Now, luckily for us, the OriginTrail team are a team of professionals, and they know how to, I guess, gain enterprise adoption. So when we're talking about enterprise adoption, we're talking about NOS, or the OriginTrail Network Operating System, upon which these companies attach their ERP systems and really get their data into a format that the OriginTrail decentralized network can understand and digest, by which any company can then query the network and find, oh, here is the product, this batch of shipment at this time frame, and this was the last event that took place. And the great thing about the OriginTrail decentralized network is that you can do more than just digitize a shipment. You can digitize a person handling the shipment, which then gives context to what that person may have done to the shipment at a particular time in the supply chain. So if I'm a farmer, that gives me a great sense of trust in the network, and in the sense that I know I have produced good, healthy produce. Why is my produce not getting there for its maximum shelf life on the shelf? Someone along the line has to be handling my products incorrectly and costing me and my reputation, giving me really bad reputation. You know, I'm taking the hits, but I'm doing the good work. So the OriginTrail decentralized network will bring full visibility to all of that. And also, because the network operating system is so usable and easy to integrate, you know, it's not, these enterprises don't have to worry about dealing with the OriginTrail Trace token on their books. From their end, they're seeing fiat prices, they're buying in like any regular licensed software. To them, it's just another, you know, just another day in the rodeo. Meanwhile, in the back end, there's a lot of business logic being applied, a lot of decentralized technologies being leveraged, like Uniswap and the Bitrex integration to onboard the tokens, because in order to use the OriginTrail decentralized network, you need to have the token. Now, this is quite important in the grand scheme of any decentralized network, because we find a lot of private permissioned networks that don't really need a token. So why do you have it? Scam? Maybe, maybe not. So this is really important to have good utility for your token. And if you're looking at a project, you're going to want to see how is the token used. Is it needed, or are they just trying to raise funds for no reason? In our case, the OriginTrail decentralized network cannot function without the token, so it's absolutely vital and needed to the network. Now, the token does more than allow you to utilize the network, but it basically allows for the proliferation of the network, because you're incentivized to be a good actor on the network. But you know what? That entire conversation is for another time. You got a little taste, but let's go on into inclusiveness, which is the third and final point of the OriginTrail main pillars. So inclusiveness in the sense of the Trace Alliance. Now, if you are building an open source technology, you're going to want to make sure you can support the technology. Now, this is a big issue the crypto space just doesn't understand for some reason. You're not just going to build a decentralized technology and expect enterprise to adopt it without support. Support is vital. You need to be able to call someone and say, hey, how do I fix this? Or how do I get this up and running? And not go through loops in some weird decentralized team in India or wherever. I'm not saying that India is a bad place, but you understand what I'm saying. You need to have a good group, conglomerate of people who have a vision for the technology, who want to support the technology, who want to adopt the technology and build it out in a way that it's easy for everyone else to hop on board. So this inclusive mentality is spot on from the OriginTrail team. This is amazing. The Trace Labs are doing exactly what needs to be done. So now let's dive a little bit into the OriginTrail decentralized network overview. We're going to be talking about the characteristics of the actual OriginTrail decentralized network itself. So the first point presented here is it's a linked data first structure. So the concept of linked data is the concept of giving context to data, connecting data, making data make sense relative to another piece of data. In that sense, the data is linked together. Now, this is a concept that is found within the, the ideology of the semantic web, whereby everything is connected and these connections have meanings. And of course, when you think of hypertext or HTTP, you're thinking about you go into this website. This website is, displayed, it has information on there. But on that website, you have links.
Linked open data. What is it? And why is it good for you as a memory organization? Put yourself in your user's shoes. Say you want to find out about that painting of Venus standing on a shell. You'd probably search on the word Venus. You'll get lots of results. Venus, Venus, Venus. And after a while, you finally reach the right Venus on an individual website. But what if the web service could help you from the start? First, by disambiguating your search, and then by connecting all kinds of relevant information, updated dynamically within the same web space. Well, linked open data makes this possible. Here's how. Tim Berners-Lee, the inventor of the World Wide Web, asked us to put our information as documents on the web, and so we did. Lots of information today is available on lots of individual websites. And then he saw the next step forward. He asked us to put our information on the web as raw data, because raw data can be linked to other data. That generates connections for the user and puts them in touch with a much richer network of information. But to make that happen, you've got to do 4 things. First, it helps if your data is openly licensed. If it's not open, it's not easily interoperable. Second, you need to put your data on the web in a certain way, so that the connecting links are present in their simplest form. And each of these links is represented using the Resource Description Framework, or RDF triple, because it's in 3 parts. And all these triples will interconnect. Third, when they are online, they need a unique address, a uniform resource identifier. Fourth, you need to put them online following the standard Web Resource Protocol, HTTP. And hey presto, your linked open data can be connected to all other linked open data.
So the OriginTrail decentralized network is built in a sense that all the data in the decentralized knowledge graph should be linked together with connections that makes the data make sense in context of a query. We will be getting deeper into that later on, but for now, that's really the general idea behind the linked data structure. Now, some schema flexibility such as GS1, EPCIS, and CBV, those two kind of go together. The WOT, the Web of Things standard, and verifiable credentials. Now, this is where things get a little bit explosive, because as we know of today, OriginTrail is this supply chain project, or well, the OriginTrail decentralized network is being leveraged for supply chain use cases. But it's not just limited to supply chain use cases. Because it supports the standards for GS1 as well as things like the WOT Web of Things, you can see a lot of different use cases pop up around the technology itself. Just keep in mind that it is a peer-to-peer network. So what can a peer-to-peer network be leveraged to use? Well, it's your mind, the sky is the limit at that point. You can pretty much, as long as the standards are supported within the OriginTrail decentralized network, and as long as we maintain those standards and everyone is using those standards, well, we could hit an age of new exponential growth, because everyone is now speaking the same language, but not just speaking the same language, they're speaking the same language in the same place. That is the ODN. So there's this one brain, this one decentralized knowledge graph, similar to Google, but decentralized and global, that can just really dominate the entire globe market. It's really a grand technology that has been built. So now let's move on to identity verification. This is the third characteristic of the OriginTrail decentralized network. Now we're talking about SSIs and DIDs here. There's quite a bit of use case for this industry, but in the sense that we're talking about GS1 or traceability solutions or food supply chain solutions. Obviously, we're talking about IDs in the sense of, you know, the GTINs, the barcodes, those IDs. Those are the identification systems in a supply chain system. So it supports those standards as well. And we're going to move on, of course, to efficient cryptographic integrity verification of subgraphs. Now, within the OriginTrail decentralized network, yes, I can run a node, you can run a node, everybody can run a node, and these enterprises can run nodes. But we're all not running the same node, if you understand what I'm saying. We are our own network per se. So if I provide data to the network, I connect my subgraph, my database, my network to the ODN. My network then becomes a subgraph of the ODN, by which if you have the correct credentials or the right cryptographic credentials to access my subgraph, my section of the network, you can do so. Of course, OriginTrail, the ODN has a way to, of course, submit these credentials for you to gain access and for you to submit to whatever, you know, to access whatever permission data you need. But it is there, the support for this technology is there. Now we are going to skip past the cryptographic connection entanglement portion because it's pretty self-explanatory, and we're going to dive into the trust minimization through decentralization. Now this ties back to the earlier conversation we had about IBM not really having their solution adopted because there's no trust, because it's not decentralized, it's not open source. People can't see through into the technology, see into the database to know what do you have, what's there. So it's not trustable. So through decentralization, and this decentralization is then powered by the token, you then have this level of trust and inclusiveness that all parties can feel comfortable with. So of course, that is really the overall OriginTrail technology. To recap, the OriginTrail network, decentralized network, is a connection first approach to building out a peer-to-peer network or decentralized knowledge graph, whereas these connections are first-class citizens. And in the sense, if the data doesn't make sense, it really isn't useful. If you can't see that A goes to B, goes to C, to D, to E, it's not really useful in a supply chain. So connections are important. The technology is neutral. Anyone in the world, any government, any institution, any enterprise, any user, any farmer, any manufacturer can leverage the technology and bring themselves from a paper-based system into the 21st century doing modern day things. The technology is decentralized, it's a full open peer-to-peer network based on the Calamity protocol. We really want to shy away from any sort of centralized or monolithic structures in a decentralized network that is supposed to support people's wealth and data. You're going to want to make sure that that is decentralized fundamentally. It is based on a PBD methodology. Now, this is a privacy by design. This is key. This is one thing a lot of people need to understand. The OriginTrail team really understands how technology works. They really built the technology from the foundation with privacy in mind. The PBD approach really exemplifies that the team is taking privacy to a whole new level, whereas it's not a side thought, it's not an afterthought. Privacy is ingrained into the very fundamental structure of the OriginTrail decentralized network, which is why it can support the communication of public and permission data, which is something the Deputy Commissioner Frank addressed in his when he was talking about the blueprint that is to be released in the new era of smart food. He addressed, like, can private and public domains of data interoperate and speak well together? Well, with OriginTrail, the answer is yes. Now, of course, I'm about to close the video out. If you guys enjoyed just sitting here enjoying, this conversation with me, like, share, and subscribe. And let's dive into this technology and learn more about it. We're going to be breaking down everything we can about this technology based on the documentation presented to us. So stay tuned and let's just, learn about the ecosystem, speculate even harder, and enjoy the technology. I hope that OriginTrail brings data entrepreneurship into the 21st century for all of us and really frees us from the tyrannical reign of these centralized entities that just don't give a damn about us. Famous here, signing out.
How do I feel about being a member of the information society? That's a difficult question because I didn't know we were